Thank you. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Swager,
Here.
Mrs. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Benton,
Here.
Mrs. Boer,
Here.
Mrs. Thomas. Here.
Reading of the notice, sir.
This is a public meeting of the Board of Education for the purpose of conducting the school business. The board will also have a federal grant sources and uses hearing within this board meeting. Neither meeting is to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes. Upon request of the superintendent, the district shall make reasonable accommodation for a person with a disability to be able to participate in this activity. And a recording shall be made of each meeting of the board as an integrated aid and shall be preserved as public documents of the board.
Thank you. Any additions or deletions?
I have a few tonight, so I'll make sure to cover these more than I would typically have. We have a celebration tonight. The 7th grade girls aren't here yet. They're going to be here somewhere probably about 5:15 to 5:30. So ask for a little bit of flexibility with the boards when they come in. They're on a short timeline. If we're in presentations, we might talk to them quickly. We have a little presentation, but obviously a lot to celebrate for 7th and 8th grade, so we added them to the presentation section. Under my section for superintendent recommendations, under people, activity, employment, there's a track and field coach position. It should read just Johnstown Middle School. The high school doesn't need to be in there. So I'll verbally make that change when we get to that. I added a resolution tonight, and the resolution is 24-2-037A, and it is a recommendation that the board approve honor flight student ambassadors. So I'll talk more about that tonight. It came through with Mrs. King just recently. But if we can, actually just happened today, everything is coming together. So I thought it'd be nice if we get the board to approve that now and not wait a month so we can get our students ready. And then last is there's an executive session, and we'll look at the order on the agenda. That really should be the second last item before adjournment. So we reorganize that. So other than that, there's no other changes to the board agenda.
If I can get a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Any questions on the additions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. On to public remarks. And I have a few people signed up here. I'll start with Bria Woodson.
Hi, my name is Bria Woodson, and I'm a senior cheerleader at Johnstown High School.
And I'm Destiny Johnson, and I'm a junior cheerleader at Johnstown High School, and we are the captains of our JV and varsity squads.
Could
Thank you for
hold 1 second. Just make sure you speak into that mic, only because
Okay.
people at home can't hear you. If you
Okay.
don't, we can hear you, but it won't be
Okay.
on a stream. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. We are here because we want to restore our cheer program to where it rightfully should be. January 2023, mid-basketball season, our coaches were informed by our athletic director that our cheer squad was no longer allowed to stunt. They were not given a reason to why. At 2 later meetings in April and June, they were told the same thing that no movement has been made. All along, we were told no schools would be allowed to stunt on our Johnstown property. However, over the past 13 months, many schools have stunted on our property when administrators were present and watching.
In September, at their 4th official meeting regarding stunting, our coaches were informed that the school's insurance policy was the reason for the grounding of our squad. Imagine our disappointment when we learned that the insurance policy had been renewed in summer, obviously with no changes. We trusted our athletic director to fight for us. Now, 13 months later, we as cheerleaders realize we need to stand up for ourselves, for what we want, and for what we as equal athletes deserve.
In the past 3 seasons, Johnstown cheerleaders have gone on to cheer in college, including one student being awarded a stunting scholarship. As a first-year cheerleader, I am leaving this program with no stunting experience, potentially losing out on scholarship money and opportunities. Life is not always fair, but if there is a path to fairness, especially in a public school, it should be strived for at all costs.
We in the cheer program are asked to pay the same fees, are held to the same academic and moral standards as all other Johnstown athletes, yet we are denied to tap into all aspects of our sport. Why would contact sports be afforded coverage while being permitted to hit, tackle, block, dive, charge, check, or dive for a dig ball, all of which risk injury, while cheerleaders are not? Our squad has felt very targeted by administration. Please join us, our squad, our program, and our supporters in righting this wrong before our spring tryouts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Destiny, since you were both signed up, I just want to make sure you didn't need to speak separately. Okay. I just didn't want to skip you since you both signed up. And then we have one with Robert Moore. And we'll respond. We just want to have everyone speak and then we'll respond.
Even though it's a different topic.
Yes.
My name is Robert Moore. This is my first board meeting. It's kind of unfortunate that I have to come to this, but I want to make it very clear first that there is no disrespect or bad thoughts against the current coaching staff of the softball program. That is not the reason for being here. The reason for being here is the lack of inconsistency from the administration and the athletic department or athletic director. And then when questions do get asked, either the answers change or there are no answers. We send our kids to school every day and the district has a dress code program. And I would assume that if I sent my son and my daughter that both attend here wearing, for example, a hoodie sweatshirt, that they would both be reprimanded for their actions, not, well, one of you are going to get reprimanded and the other one's not. And it seems like that's what we're doing with the coaching staff, and we're allowed to have parent coaches and then we're not allowed to have parent coaches. And then over here we are again, and then over here we're not again. Or we're allowed to have a volunteer coach that has not been graduated for 3 years, but then over here, oh no, we can't. So I guess I just ask, where are we going to get consistency at, and why is there inconsistency?
My name's Andrew Zach, and I'm here with Robert as well for the same reasons. This did directly involve my daughter, but the reason for me being here and the first time I've ever come to a board meeting has nothing to do with my daughter, as I have another daughter in the program who's also an athlete who's going to be here several more years. Same questions have come about. I've asked multiple questions, trying to just get some clarity. Again, not downing anybody who's on the coaching staff, the decisions that have been made, but the inconsistency of what we're being told and what happens behind closed doors. So the understanding was, hey, there's a new procedure in place where you cannot be a coach unless you've been excluded from high school for 3 years or have graduated for 3 years. Okay, that's my understanding. That just came about. I believe it was October 30th. There was an email that I was able to see because my daughter was involved, though she was not copied on the email. One of the coaches did get approved by the board mid-November, which was several weeks after this email came out, who is not graduated for a total of 3 years yet and was grandfathered in. Okay, again, if it stands for one, it should stand for the other. It's a volunteer. My understanding in that as well is that she was grandfathered in, as I said. You can't be grandfathered into something you haven't been approved for, right? It's every year, every term, just like our head coaches. They have to reapply. It's a term. So the word grandfathered in doesn't set right. And I was hoping as well for some clarity. Not, and this again is separate from my personal daughter. I have another child in the district and another one behind that. So if we're going to do it for one, we need to do it for the other. There's nothing in writing. It just seems when we decide it fits, then we do it. So I've asked multiple questions over the course of weeks and weeks and weeks. Again, my first board meeting, And I have yet to get understanding of how those decisions get made.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, did you want to speak or? Okay. All right. Did you want to address cheerleading?
Yeah, let me start with the cheerleading. So we're looking into the matter. I got an email from Ms. Ferguson. I believe it's one of your girls. Yeah, did you get my reply? Okay. So we're looking into that. I sent you a message back on Friday. Admittedly, there are some inconsistencies. It doesn't make sense. I was at the game on Thursday night.
We watched the Northridge. Yeah, we were both watching, and they brought out a pad.
It
And we
was
were,
like a 2-inch pad. And, so actually, we had checked our last pressure we had talked about insurance provider, but I know you were in contact with them today. So let us look into that and understand, because I don't understand the consistency. Some schools are, some aren't. Sorry, because it doesn't make sense when I say you see those rates. I mean, it's not like you see them performing and accepting our girls can. Oh, yeah. If you go to the mic.
yeah, only because, like I said, people at home can't hear you if
Give
you
your
don't.
name as well, too.
Yeah, if you don't mind saying your name.
Oh, Lori Ferguson. I'm the JV cheer coach, and we do appreciate it because it was out of the blue that it was taken, and it was just on a random January 19th, partially through our third season. Didn't seem to have any reason for it, but actually we were not given a reason. We were not given a reason for 8 months, and then subsequently, like the what they read said that we found out later that the policy had already renewed, and found out that they were citing insurance. But it just feels, again, like you said, very inconsistent. We were told we weren't allowed to know why for 7 months, 8 months, and we were the coaches. I mean, it didn't sit well. It didn't sit well. And honestly, we've been following what we were told to just deal with the AD, just deal with the AD, just deal with the AD. And 13 months in, our wonderful young people said, coaches, we're going to the board meeting and we're going to go speak. So we decided to take the other side of coaching and help coach up these young people into, help them learn how to deal with something in a positive way. So I appreciate you looking into it. We're just thrilled to have someone listening. So.
No, thank you.
So board members, we'll just continue on this path. I think it was the 7th when we got the record request on it. We're working on it. Like I said, I think you reached out to me. I don't understand the inconsistencies. I actually asked them over JD over that, and they're going to look into their insurance. I do know last year when we acquired our past president that they said it was not permitted for our insurance.
Yeah.
So let us better understand it, because again, the mat on Thursday night was very inconsistent.
I will say that is the first school, if the paperwork that the girls passed out to you, we've been very, very involved in trying to get this cleared up. So every time someone stunted, we've made a note. That was the only time that there was a mat brought out. All of those other schools were, just stunting on our property, which clearly did not sit well with students who were told nothing was going to happen on our property. So, but thank you. We've passed that, the policy on to an insurance consultant that was going to help us read through it and understand it. So
I'll continue on that path, and I'll keep in contact with you.
perfect. Thank you.
I do want to say thank you for helping grow our students as well too in different ways, because I think so much anymore is lost in the discourse, editorialized a little bit. I think it's great that you can seek to understand one another, and if there's an answer that we're not happy with, at least we understand the rationale for it.
Yes. Thank you so much. We had a lot of talks before this to make sure that it wasn't a free for all. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll give the board an update on the softball. What do you want? Because some of that is the coaching that was adopted with the 3 years.
If you maybe explain where we're at on that, the policy, or I want to say we didn't pass a policy. It's not a policy, as I understood it. It's just a procedure guideline, if you can explain. And then the latest I received on that, because I had a conversation with Ed on this, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, maybe. Sorry, I didn't respond to your text this morning. I literally came straight from work here, and it's been a rough day, as they all know, because I usually don't get here this early, and walked in still wearing my same clothes from work. So, if Phil could update us on that, and I think as a board it would help, because for those that don't know, we're not involved in the day-to-day operations of the school. That's what the administration does. The board, we pass policies, we allocate funds, we hire and appoint these two folks here, our treasurer and our superintendent, and they run the school. So that's how this operation works. Board members represent the community. So we're community members, and we oversee the board of education, but we do not handle every little detail, despite what some people may believe. We don't really know everything that goes on in the day-to-days. That's what we have staff for. That's what their jobs are. So a lot of this, when you bring it to us, we have to do the research ourselves as well, because we don't always know all the details.
And again, it's not a policy, it's an administrative guideline. So we establish policies. Amanda and I are on the policy, she's the chairwoman, I guess. But we establish policies for the school, but then from those policies, they generate administrative guidelines.
Bless you. And I'm not aware of any, I guess, administrative guideline on
No.
parent coaching.
No.
Obviously, parent coaching becomes difficult for the coach as much as it does for anyone else. So if you can avoid it, it's great. But the reality is our community members are our coaches. So you're always going to run into some parent coaching, whether we want it or not. It's always better when you don't, as long as you have a qualified coach. But at the same time, we need volunteers. So the reality is we're always going to have parent coaches out there. Yeah, I mean, it's just the reality of where we are in our district, and we want community members involved. So those coaches take on an additional challenge. Having coached my own son before, it's very difficult because he listens to nothing what I say. So I have to have the other coach him. Yeah, he knows. I say it all the time, but they also get coached all the way to the game, all the way back. So it's not fair to them either. But I digress. On the policy one, though. So everyone, just the process here. Technically, the board, we approve all coaches and volunteers on a yearly basis. Absolutely. Every contract's 1 year for every position. They expire at the end of every year, and then we reappoint but how that works is the AD, the coach, or whatever area, the principal makes a recommendation to the superintendent. The superintendent reviews it, puts it on the agenda, and then we vote. So as a board member, I can tell you, we get the volunteers and the coaches, unless there's some type of reason for us to know that there's an issue. They're voted on, and we make those votes based on the recommendations of our staff. I mean, that's what the staff is here to do, make those recommendations. So when we look at, that's why the guidelines matter, as far as those go, because we don't have a policy on parent coaching. We don't have a policy on all of these issues. We refer those back to the administrative folks to vet those people and get us the best person for the job, whoever that may be.
Can I make a suggestion? Can we get, can I ask Mrs. King, and then we'll get an appointment with the parents, because there's a couple issues here. I don't want to try and do this cold, because
Yeah.
I don't know about, I mean, it's going to take me some time to dig in about who's a volunteer, who's not. I don't have all, I was starting to look at records. I don't have all that available on the top of my head right now. Well, I would say Mrs. King, if you haven't talked to Mrs. King, let me know. Mrs. King, let me know, and I'll come to the meeting as well too. And let's get everything defined, and then I'll be able to make sure I can go through all the records. And some things I can't speak to personnel, but I can certainly speak to procedures and guidelines. And then if there's individual issues that there's concerns about, I might be able to address some of those without getting into personnel. No, I'm aware of, because we deal with it in other realms too, when we have substitutes in the buildings as well too, beyond coaching. Now I'm aware of it from the fall when we have, students are a little further removed than, or not that far removed, I should say, from graduations. So I am aware of that. If you could follow up and then let me know, and I'll come, and then we'll get everything organized, and I can get a little better responses. That would be okay.
And there are some things that publicly, if it involves a student, or that we're not allowed to speak of, we're not allowed to address individual students in public about certain things. So those are usually handled by the superintendent and the principal, because as board members, we're not actually allowed access to some of that information, even if it's student data related. So that's best handled through the administrative staff. Anyone have any other questions? And again, to the cheerleading folks here, we'd love to work this out and see it. I'm always intrigued. I always watch Noah do flips and do everything that he did, and it was always interesting. Yes. Yeah. If you can go to that mic, you can. Only because no one else can hear you if not.
My name is Noah Thompson, but I graduated 2022, and I cheered on the cheer program with Fergie and all of them and stuff. But I did just kind of want to say something on their behalf. When they told me that the cheer program has kind of went into a dip, it did make it kind of upset me in a little bit, because they told me we can't stunt, we can't do this, we can't do that, and I was like, well, why not? I don't know what's going on. Basically, I think these girls need to be given a chance. 2 years ago, we could throw someone 10 to 15 feet up in the air and still catch them. But now they're not able to, just because of the simple fact that insurance can't cover it, or they're being told that they can't do this, they can't do that. If football is a sport, cheer should be a sport at this point. If someone can get dropped at to the floor, but then football is able to be covered under insurance, and they're just going head to head, it's a little bit different to me. And I mean, we even had I didn't graduate with her, she graduated a year after me, but we had someone who ended up actually going to college for cheer. So she went to college for cheer, and it's a stunt-based program. So they're putting people up in the air, they're throwing people in the air. These girls are doing 360s and stuff like that in the air. I just think that
You have about 15 seconds before you hit your limit.
I just think that genuinely they need to be given a chance. And said you wanted to kind of look into that and stuff like that, but I don't know. It's a strong group. That's all I can say. But yeah.
Thank you.
The stunt just became a sport for this year. The stunt just became a sport for this year at college level. So it's separate from the cheer program. Yes, different class.
Well, I can assure you that Dr. Wagner's on this, and we'll figure something out one way or the other. either other people are doing something they're not supposed to, or we should figure out how we can as well. I mean, that's really where it comes down to. A lot of safety precautions. I don't know it. I mean, I only know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know anything about this. So we'll look into it and figure out a way to come to a conclusion.
We'll get back to both concerns, and then we'll keep the board updated as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. And Noah. All right, moving on. I think we're ready for.
Are we ready for everyone over here? Okay. Can we, this actually works out timing wise, so we'll start to celebrate the 7th and 8th grade
We're
girls.
just 8th right now, right? The 7th coming?
This is
Okay.
Right.
All right. So we'll go ahead and start with the 8th grade basketball girls. They are here first, so we'll start with them. And before we even introduce them to celebrate their season, I just want you to know that as we introduce them, there's so much more to celebrate about these girls than just their basketball skills. So JMS is proud of them for many, many reasons. And it worked that they have their banquet tonight, right after this. So it worked well time-wise. So I think what we'll do is I'll introduce the 8th grade girls, and then Dr. Wagner will share some highlights from their season. And then Coach Schaefer, if you'd like to share something when he's finished, and a couple of the girls, I think, maybe have a highlight they want to share. So our 8th grade girls, and ladies, if you want to just kind of maybe move forward when I call your names. So Kaylin Cox, number 11, just move right up there. Lucy Edwards, 21.
Get up. Go.
Addie Rader, 12. Ava Likens, 14. Lucy Schaefer, 33. Bailey Neff, number 10. And Leah Eckenrode, number 23.
So before they sit down, okay.
Yeah.
I have a little summary about their season. So the 8th grade girls basketball team just completed a remarkable 18-1 season. After an opening loss to Granville to start the season on November 27th, the team worked hard and stuck together through 15 straight wins to finish the regular season as number 1 seed. After tournament wins over Watkins Memorial and Zanesville, the table was set for them to avenge their only loss, the championship game on February 8th against the Blue Aces. The mission was successful, with Johnstown winning 37-25 to take home the trophy. The 8th grade head coach is Brad Schaefer, and Jeremy Neff is the assistant coach. And then Mrs. Almendinger already read the list of girls that we have here, and I think our coach is going to say something now.
Yeah, the 8th grade coach.
Gotta go over it. Yeah, you gotta do the speech. That's one of the requirements. They didn't tell you.
That's what happens when you win, Coach.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say, I want to thank the girls. Like I said, we lost the first game of the year, and we lost by 20 points. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is going to be a challenge. But with Jeremy's help, we worked really hard this year on defense and made a huge difference. And honestly, we finished 18-1. 18-1. And not a first for myself. I've never won 18 games in a row. That was pretty awesome. And it was my first win against Granville, which I was so excited about because I work with a friend at work who lives in Granville. He's rubbing in the last 3 years. So it was really sweet. And I do enjoy the girls. They're awesome. They were coming every day at practice. They came every day. And it was enjoying them so much. So I want to say thank you and thanks, Jeremy. He did a lot of work. He did a lot for me this year. I just want to say thank you.
Looks like you were nominated.
My name is Leah Eckenrode, and I appreciate you guys recognizing us and supporting us. We want to thank our coaches, our family, and our community, and they have done so much for us. We finished 18-1, and we won the championship with only 7 players, and I'm very proud of us.
I just want to say thank you to my teammates and my coaches. You guys really stepped up this season with only 7 players, and I'm really proud of us. And I'd like to thank my mom too, because she helped me throughout the whole time. And I just want to say manifestation is real, because I played it through in my head a lot, and I really wanted it to happen, and we did it. So I'm really proud of us. Elaborating on what they said, I just want to say thank you to my teammates, and then especially my brother for helping. Thanks to Coach Schaefer, you're there. But thank you to everybody.
Excellent, ladies. Congratulations, and I'm sure Coach Merrill, Coach Eckenrode, and Coach Helmke are very excited about what the future holds for them as you move up. Congratulations.
Okay, thanks, 8th graders. If you want to step aside, and we'll have the 7th graders come up as you are called.
You can take that with you.
We also
Thank
want to
you.
mention that both teams will be recognized next week at the Village Council meeting.
Thanks,
So that's exciting.
Thank you.
All right, so if the 7th grade team, as you come up, why don't you split half of you on each side of the table so we can still see the board? We have Jalen Fauble, number 5. Sadie Sarr, 13. Kyla Cox, number 15. Olivia Whitmer, 22. Maylee McLeod, number 24. Avery Molinar, number 25. Reese Ferris, number 30. Anna Fish, number 35. Violet Wenzel, 42. Ellie Stone, 43. Addie Offenberger, number 44. Evie Grigsby, number 45. And Juliana DeNovo, number 55.
So I have a little summary about the 7th grade girls, if you're ready. So the 7th grade girls basketball team just completed a historic 19-0 undefeated season, outscoring opponents 630 to 231, which averages per game 33 to 12. There was only one game decided by less than 10 points all season, and that was a 24-22 win over Licking Valley on January the 11th. They had tournament wins over Zanesville and Watkins Memorial before capping off the perfect season with a 35-23 championship victory over number 3 seeded Licking Valley Panthers at Licking Valley High School on February 8th. The 7th grade coach is Andy Cannon, also led by assistant coach Jerry Cannon.
guys can grab the trophy for your pictures. Always looks good. There you go. Scoot on in. There you go. Coach, get in there.
Okay. I don't think I need the microphone. Just saying a little bit off of that little note that he talked about, holding our opponents to 12 points. At the beginning of the year, my brother and I decided, let's focus on control. We can only do what we can do. Okay? We can't control the referees. Yes. And they're going to do their thing. That's what they're there for. You can't control them. Move on. So we picked 4 things that we wanted to stress. Defense, rebounding, and this team was hard-nosed defense and was always there to help us when they out of something. And they were relentless on rebounds. We always told them, you can't stop your opponent from scoring, but you can limit how many shots they take. And that they did. And the other 2 things we tried to control was attitude and effort. And these 13 girls, for 4 months, 6 days a week, brought an amazing attitude, practice for the game, and their effort was relentless. I know I feel like and girls, thank you. You're very, very important. Thank you, my brother. We have a lot of fun, and sometimes the girls want to do a little basketball humor, but we do have a lot of fun. Thanks.
Excellent. Congratulations. Thanks, Coach. Unless they have anything they'd like to add. Yep. Yep. You can take
You
that.
can take that with you.
Someone gets
Take
it.
that with
you
you,
get
guys.
that. Again, congratulations to both 7th and 8th grade girls. That's excellent. We got a terrific program. Don't forget Thursday night is senior night for the ladies. So anyone that wants to go watch some excellent basketball, go see the girls or the ladies play on Thursday night. I think it's East Knox, maybe. I forget who they're playing. I think it's East Knox. But anyways, that's senior night, and the ladies team is on a roll right now. So they're playing quite well, and hopefully that rolls into the tournament. And as you can see, 7th and 8th grade girls are very, very strong. So we've got a nice program going here, and that's a tribute to the parents, the kids, and the coaches in the community to make that happen. So thank you.
And as Mrs. Almendinger said, we're going to have City Council is going to recognize the girls also on February 20th at 6:30 p.m.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move into the rest of our presentations. Yep. Next, we're going to go ahead with Mrs. Drummy, and she's going to talk about, I know the board has asked quite a few questions about recent valuations and implications with taxes and school revenue. So Mrs. Drummy has a presentation to share with the board.
Good evening. Yeah, I think it was maybe last month's board meeting. President Swager was sharing a little bit about his tax bill and thought it might be a good opportunity if we talked about property values and how they impact our school revenue. There have been some recent changes in property values that we're probably all well aware of, increases to values. So we'll talk about how, why that occurred, what's projected to happen, and those values change, tax rates, our district revenue, what's understanding the impact for our taxpayers, and how it's impacting our overall revenue, and in relation to inflation. So let's talk first about how do we deal with these tax bills and values. So we're all very familiar with our home's market value. That isn't how we pay the tax, though. We pay tax based on 35% of our home's value. And that is simply multiplied, it's just math, multiplied by the rates the effective rates that are set by the Department of Taxation, the state of Ohio Department of Taxation. That results in our tax bill. We all get a discount on our tax bills of either anywhere from 10% to 12.5%, depending on if it's owner occupied or not. And the state picks up that part of our bill on our behalf so that we get then our current bills. So when we have the rates that we determine, they're based off of different types of levies and the changing then tax rates for those different levies. We have 3 types that can be assessed. We have inside mills, which is not voted on by the taxpayer. It is actually established in law for all local governments. Our inside mills is 4.6. It's a constant rate. It doesn't change with the value of our properties. And when property valuation goes up, we get growth on that increase. And that's in the left side. Then in the middle, fixed rate levies, those are voter approved levies that we've asked for support. Those have very limited growth because as property values go up, the rate actually can go down so that we are not yielding any more of the rate than was originally approved by voters. And that's just to eliminate that inflationary growth. And the rate can keep decreasing. So we had an interesting thing happen a couple years ago when values were going down, the rates were going up. So it acts a little bit peculiar at times. Then we also have fixed sum levies. That just simply means instead of approving a rate of 5 mils, maybe we are asking a voter to approve a fixed amount of 5 million. So it's voter approved on an amount. There is no growth on that. So when property values go up and bills go up, if we've asked for 5 million, we'll never get more than 5 million. It's a static amount. That amount is not included in our floor. And we are actually positioned at the 20 mil floor, which is the minimum amount that can be collected for taxes. So I think that bodes very well for our community. The voted millage is higher, but every year, even when a levy is passed, as soon as it's passed, the next year when it gets taxed, it could be taxed at a smaller millage if it is one of those fixed rates.
So the fixed sum, a good example is that our emergency levy that we renew every 5 years that generates $1.2 million. That's a fixed sum. So regardless of how many people move in, if more people move in, your bill actually goes down slightly because it's spread across more people, more property value.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep,
I just want to
that's
make sure.
Yeah. Thank you for making that point. So I think I've already kind of hinted to this. As our property values go up, what's the relationship to taxes? The tax rate in particular, because we talked about the tax is driven by the rate or that effective rate. So as values go up, rates go down. This graphic, it just illustrates the historical district values versus tax rates. And so you can see on the left side, based on tax year, that as those property values have increased, on the right-hand side, we can see that effective rates have gone down each year.
Can you also tell them why there's a jump every 3 years?
Sure. I think we might get to that, but it's good to,
Oh,
that's all right.
I'm
It's good
sorry.
to illustrate it, though, and we'll say it a couple times. So property values are adjusted every 3 years. One of them is called a triennial update, which is basically the county auditor adjusting for market trends. And it's an analytical adjustment based on sales. And so certain communities could be adjusted differently. But then on the other 3 years or the 6-year cycle, it's a reappraisal year. During a reappraisal year, every home is evaluated individually as to what that value of that home should be. And it is by inspection. Adjusters from the county auditor's office will drive by homes and make that adjustment.
And was this recent year a
Reappraisal.
was a reappraisal year? That's why we saw. I mean, I'm guessing from what I've seen in my own tax bill, the reappraisal years mine tend to go up higher than the other years because someone comes by and looks at your house and they raise the price more than when they're just standardized, putting a percentage on top.
Yes, and we had something else that happened. So in taxes are in arrears, so we're talking 2023, January 1 of 23 is what we're all paying bills on now. So 3 years ago was January 2020. And because of COVID, county auditors were noticing, and you might recall people selling homes, this little mini boom. And county auditors were advocating that values needed to be adjusted higher. And the Ohio Department of Taxation put the kibosh on that and said, no, it's COVID. People have had job loss. People may not be working, or they have reduced hours. So they limited that valuation increase. So right now in this reappraisal, we're experiencing almost a 6-year catch-up then, is why it feels more this year.
Oh, it doesn't feel, it is.
It is.
It is more, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it's definitely more. But I understand what you're saying. Since they didn't, what I'll say, properly adjust them 3 years ago, we're seeing the real adjustment all more so in 1 year because, yeah, this 37% is about what I saw in my evaluation go up, which, you know, and the challenge for most people is, look, this is all paper money to me because I'm not selling my house. So the value of my house almost means nothing to me because I'm not looking to move. So you don't realize any of the value of it until you move, you know. So that's the challenge. Unless you're selling your house and moving, the valuation of it, while it's nice to look at it on paper and feel that your house went up, you have a little more equity to borrow against, I guess, if you want to. But right now, my interest rate's 8.81% on my equity, so I'll be leaving that alone as well. But that's some of the challenges of the property valuation. But especially when we see such an increase in while it's 1 year, it's over 6 years being caught up. So it's one tax bill that kind of catches up that amount. And I think that's what sent, you know, and this is not a Johnstown issue. This isn't a Licking County issue. This is a state of Ohio issue that you're seeing. And of course, it doesn't help that we're in central Ohio where housing market it's hot. I mean, look, you got to think, everyone look around. If your house goes up for sale in Johnstown, it sells pretty darn quick. So obviously house values, while I'd like to argue my house value, I just accepted it and went along because I don't know that it's wrong.
So this is really similar, except this graphic is just class 1, residential and agriculture values. And we're looking forward instead of historical. The last slide was looking historical. So we expect in 2026, values are probably going to go up again, about 16%. And so as those values go up in 26, the effective rate that's collected and assessed on that will go down. You see the bar going down in 26 on the right. This is our tax rates. So this illustrates just how kind of static, even though we do see values going up because of those adjustments, talking with my hands, those adjustments to kind of eliminate the inflationary growth. The only inflationary growth we get, you might recall I said, is on inside mills, just that 4.6, and new construction. Actually, when new construction comes on year 1, we get the full voted rate, and we have, you can see, almost 40 voted mills, but here in the middle of the chart, that 20 mills, we're at the 20 mil floor. So our rates have been reduced as values go up till we're at the minimum that can be collected. It cannot go lower than 20 mils.
And that's the 20 mil floor you hear a lot of the state legislature talking about right now when they're talking about addressing some of these valuation issues. You see some House bills going through, and a lot of them discuss the 20 mil floor. So that's what they're referring to, is the fixed amount of inside millage 20 mil floor. Okay.
And that is a good place to be as well. It's not, it is the minimum, but it's also a good place to be in that some districts who are not at the floor, they don't get any growth. They just continue to be um, rates reduced. So we are seeing a little bit of growth. So we've talked about some of that growth. Let's talk about what our costs are. And just very limited because this is about valuation and taxes. But our daily cost per pupil is $101. And you can see then how that's being shared. About 48% or nearly half, it comes from our property taxes for that daily cost to educate the student. The balance of that is coming from the state or other federal monies. So when you think about that, I just wanted to put that perspective. That's a pretty good value. Think about what opportunities our students have, not just to be educated, but for their enrichments, extracurriculars. And I just think, I remember how much daycare cost when almost 30 years ago for my child. I don't know what it costs today, but I'm sure it's a lot more than $100 a day, or at least for a week. So let's talk about, in particular, some properties. And this speaks to what Mr. Swager was illustrating last month. So we wanted to see how are taxes impacting our residents, in particular in different areas. So we went and looked at the old market values and this is Liberty Township, from 2023 to 2024. And this is a little confusing because these are actual calendar years, but the taxes relate, like we said, they're a year old. So we can see that value in Liberty Township has gone up about 21%. Of that, the school's revenue from that has gone up 10%. And some of the different taxing areas went down. And I know the schools get a lot of credit. We are the largest single recipient of property taxes, but there are these other entities as well, and some of theirs have gone up significantly. The county itself went up 20%. But on average, when we look at Liberty Township and then we look at Monroe Township, the average increase in revenue or bills is 6 to 7% in Liberty and Monroe. But when we look at that difference in Monroe Township, the school's share of that increase was 4%. And fire and EMS received 46%. I don't know, Tim, if you would like to expand on that. Because
Well, yeah. So everyone understands the Monroe Township, we passed a new fire levy. So you're going to see a bigger increase in Monroe. However, Liberty and Jersey and those other townships that we service, they don't have that voted millage. So if you're in Monroe Township, you're going to see a larger percentage going to the fire for the new levy that we voted on. Yeah, the fire station. But the Liberty Township folks who are in our school district will not see that increase because they are not in Monroe, so therefore don't pay the additional fire levy that was passed. So that's one of the things to look at when you look at total tax bill. And that's why I think it's important to show this, because in our district, for those, we are Monroe, we are Jersey, we are Liberty. We have folks in different townships in our school district. However, their tax bills are greatly different based on a variety of factors, and that being one of them.
That's a good segue into the next, because we are sensitive to how it affects different areas of our community differently. So this next slide, we're looking at Leafy Dell and the new addition at Crestview Drive.
I love that she put the new addition, because that just makes her sound like a Johnstown person. I know she hasn't been here long, but when you say new addition, it's Rolling Meadows, but the new addition makes me chuckle, because anyone around here will still refer to our area as the new addition, but Rolling Meadows.
So when I looked at these properties, the increases range from 53 to 58% in the property value. That tells me two things. these properties were probably undervalued, and so they have received a larger adjustment. The school share of that, the revenue then on that valuation is between 40 and 60%. So they have felt it more in those areas, that the increase.
I appreciate you putting this out there because, we want to talk about really what's happening to our taxpayers. And if you're in Leafydale, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone over there. The houses sell very fast in Leafydale. As soon as one comes up, it goes, and that's what's driving the market. So what does that do? That means the valuation on those houses, and the same with Rolling Meadows. Houses down there are selling extremely fast. So you're seeing valuations go up extremely fast in those two areas. And when your valuation goes up, it directly ties to your property value taxes. So it's important to look at your total tax bill and see where you're at. And perhaps they were undervalued. Perhaps the market is just hotter in those two areas. But you're definitely seeing a bigger impact in the Rolling Meadows and the Leafydale areas. But I also will tell you, if you put a for sale sign up in front of your house there, you better be ready because they're going to knock on your door before you even get the stake pounded in. Right.
So just to kind of wrap up what we've seen and heard about, we know that the property values are increasing, and it really is, we have that triennial adjustment, but really 2020 delayed adjustments. We're feeling the brunt of that now, and we do have some growth in our district. So now we understand that how the valuation increase affects our tax rates, that it's that inverse relationship, values go up, rates go down, and how that increases or how that impacts the school district revenue that we saw where revenue's been historically flat, but obviously with inflation and the developmental growth, we will see some increases. And we're sensitive that for taxpayers, they are feeling that 6-year adjustment right now to their property value. The district revenue compared to district real estate tax revenue compared to overall revenue is growing a little bit faster. And then the real estate tax, and I think part of that we see because the property tax is 48%. It's not as significant. And we're getting some other sources of revenue outside of taxes from, as new businesses come into the area, we have negotiated the income sharing agreements. There's other incentive payments and pilot payments. So as those continue to grow, we may see that type of revenue growing faster than property taxes. Right now, I think our takeaway, and I have heard the board's goals to save and be prepared for the future. And I think the position that we're in now with the revenue growth, we are going to be very good stewards of the community's money and get ahead of the enrollment growth that's coming. And we're very well positioned to do that by saving some of where we have some of this revenue, saving this for construction of new buildings. We're already talking about construction of an addition at the high school. So we are going to be investing for the future, where a lot of districts who are growing significantly feel growing pains. We are positioned to be ready for that growth. And hopefully that'll minimize the impact. Generally, the trend is you have students, and then it's 18 months to 24 months before that money follows the student. So we're in a very good, unique position that we can get prepared for those students and be ready.
I appreciate that. And I think, as we've mentioned multiple times, this board is fiscally very conservative, and we will continue to be for these reasons, because as we build, add on to the high school, our goal is to not go out for additional levies. Excuse me. Our goal is not to go out for additional levies, and we're trying to save that money internally and allocate that properly so that we can go, I think, what are we at, $3 million-ish to do the high school addition?
Probably about 3.6
Right.
is the rough number, yes.
So the goal is to be able to do those without going back to the taxpayers for bond issues. Thank you very much. So those are some of the goals of the board to able to handle those without additional funding more than what we're seeing in these valuations. I will say the other important factor is these work really well until we see housing coming in. Right now, we're doing fine, and we want to see businesses in because businesses increase your valuation without bringing children. I mean, not to, from a school standpoint, rooftops bring kids, which cost money, which is extra buildings, more teachers, all of those types of things. So when we look at the valuations in that, we always want to see additional business revenue because that's what makes our jobs a lot easier when you have those dollars coming in and not a lot of additional rooftops with them. So it's important to balance that, and that's where Dr. Wagner, Ruth Ann, and I have been working with the city and the township on the economic development side to understand that, how that ties in. Because you can have rooftops coming in, but it's got to be tied to some financial structure of businesses to make that model work. If we get inundated with housing, this model goes right out the window and doesn't work for any of us because then we'll be needing dollars to build additional schools without having the revenue coming in. So it's important that we really work together with the city and the townships to understand how that growth works and to phase it in because it takes us 2, 3, 4 years to build a building. We can't flip a switch tomorrow and accept a bunch of new students in. So it's working through that area and being fiscally conservative to make sure we can do these additions, that we can look at saving dollars to build the next building because high school's 55, 60 million. I don't know.
Probably about that in this economy, it's going to be 3 to 4 years, more likely 4 years to get everything
right.
start
I mean,
to finish. Yeah.
They're big numbers,
Yeah.
and without us being really, really tight up here, that's the only way we're going to make it as a community without having to really struggle. We see these dollars. I pay my taxes, and not to, one of those examples was my house. I put it up there for a reason. I saw a significant, increase, and I want to make sure I know where my dollars are going. So, as board members up here, we all live in this community and pay these taxes as well. So we want to make sure that we're being conservative with those dollars and making sure that we're not taxing people out of their homes. And that's one of our biggest concerns throughout the state of Ohio is, what do you do in these situations? So we're going to remain conservative. We get asked a lot of times to, why don't we build this? Why don't we do that? I would love it all as a resident, as a parent, as a person in this community. But first and foremost, our job is to educate the kids. And that's our responsibility. So we have to remain fiscally conservative to be able to do that in the future. We can't spend, I don't know about you, but if I know I have a big expense coming up in a couple of years, maybe my car is getting old and I know I'm going to have to replace it, I start saving now. I don't wait till the day my car, dies and then I turn around and go, where am I going to get the money? That's what we're doing here as a school board. We're starting to save those dollars now because we know the expense is coming. So when you see some of these statements and talk about our dollars, that's what Felicia is here to do, is to make sure the board understands where we're at fiscally and that everybody in the team is working together to make sure we can live within those means regardless of growth or not. So
I would put in another comment too, that we paid cash for the renovation of the intermediate school. We didn't go to the state, we didn't go to the taxpayer. So we put money aside, just like he said, our car's getting old, or we knew our school building was getting old. We had a choice to make. A new building would have cost us anywhere from $25 to $30 million. And we said, I think we'll just renovate the old. And we've gotten good comments. Does the building have a few shortcomings? Of course. Does it have a lot of pluses? Of course. So you do what you can do when you can do it. And we avoided going to the taxpayer and asking for more tax dollars. So I'm real proud of that because I don't know of many schools that could have written a check, and we did. So, but the folks at home, I hope you hear that we're fiscal conservatives.
thank you. I really appreciate the presentation because that's probably one of the biggest questions I get asked is the valuations. How does it affect the schools? What are we doing with, people don't always understand that it's not a direct correlation. Your house may have went up 40%, but your taxes didn't necessarily go up 40%. So I do appreciate the education on that. Thank you.
Our next presentation is on the proposed program of studies for both the middle school and high school. We're going to switch PowerPoints here while Debbie's getting that ready. Later in the agenda tonight, you will see resolutions that request that the board approve the revised program of studies for both the middle school and the high school. One of the things we're trying to do this year is start this process or complete this process a bit earlier. If we have approval tonight, especially at the high school, we'll be able to get started with the student scheduling in February. So we'll be ready for that. Get this ready. Did we give out of water? Can I get something? You ready? Okay. So the first slide, I know the board's seen some of these things, but I wanted to give you an overview. So at the high school, one of the things that we want to offer that you've seen in the program of studies is the math modeling and reasoning course. And as a reminder, that will serve as an equivalency for Algebra 2, Algebra 2, or the equivalency is required by the state standards. We always continue to have a good relationship with CTEC, and one of the things that they will do this coming year is we'll take over our engineering courses and help those become CTE or career technical education eligible courses. That will also increase our robotics offering, that in concert with the donation that we received from Intel. We've talked a lot about the CTEC multi-skilled technician programs. We're quite proud of that program, and that's going to be a partnership that will serve as a satellite at the high school and will allow a few students from area school districts on the western side of Licking County to join us. And the idea will be that there'll be a reciprocal relationship as other career tech programs develop. There's a course offer. The Ohio High School Athletic Association is offering an officiating course, and we've realized that that's an option for our students. The idea there is that if we could have some high school eligible students who are certified as officiators, then they could pick up some of the younger grades, and then there's a shrinking pool, so that would have some of your older, more experienced coaches able to serve at the high school level. And then finally, well, not finally, it's on this slide, but then we also talk about financial literacy and how important that class is, and we will have it as a standalone course this coming year, and not as embedded in another course. Any questions about those offerings before I? Next, we have, we spent a lot of time with our math program. So the highest level of math you can have in K-12 education is Calculus BC. So this coming year, we will have the second highest, which will be the highest we've had, I believe, ever, which would be Calculus AB, and then we'll have ready for the following year Calculus BC. But this really involves the articulation of our math program, which we'll talk about more later. With our health program, we want to make sure that we're delivering that more in person now, so that we will no longer have a online version for that. We want to make sure that we have more, again, staying with this theme, more more in-person offerings. So we're limiting some of the online offerings right now and make sure we have more direct teacher support, especially in the core areas. And one of the things we'll think about is what we're focused on is credit recovery. We're going to look, and we have been looking at course enrollments and suggest future modifications. As I said at the beginning, if we can get students registered earlier in February this year, then we'll be able to tell where trends are and how our students, what they're signing up for. Thank you, Debbie. Overall, there will be an increase in educational offerings throughout the high school for this coming year. And again, we're building a model for the future. Any questions about that slide? At the middle school, fewer changes, but we're obviously the middle school feeds the high school, so we're very interested in everything that is going on K-12 and certainly at the middle school, high school in this manner. So we're going to do more with STEAM education. Some of that becomes the partnerships that we have with Meta and then also Intel. So you'll see more coming, and we've talked about those before. Family consumer sciences, we're going to replace those. They haven't had a large enrollment in recent years, so we're going to look more at career exploration financial literacy. Those are CTEC modules, and we'll have professional development offered by CTEC. And we've talked a lot about math, and this is more of a 5-12 than it is middle school or just high school. But with our math, we'll begin compacting or sequencing math down in 5th grade so we can start to develop tracks. In essence, as you're working through middle school, we can take 3 years of course content and be able to advance into 2 years then and help students progress. If you look, when we were talking about the high school and work backwards, that calculus BC, which we'll eventually get to next school year, that will allow us to back into, and it starts actually all in 5th grade, so we'll be looking at honors and students who are gifted. And those are really, I know that we've had curriculum committee and different reviews of this, but those are the overviews, or the overview, I should say, on both programs of study. I've been talking with some of the board members that have had some individual questions. A couple things I wanted to highlight is, this is not done, and we're continuing. As I said, we're looking to the future and what we can do. Said the Calculus BC, but there'll be other things that are offered. One of the questions that has come up is about College Credit Plus and what's offered. We still will use College Credit Plus. In fact, there'll be really some expanded offerings. But one of the things we want to talk about, or I want to answer a question that was received, is about parents realizing that their children could be exposed to curriculum materials that aren't ones that we normally have control over when a child enrolls at a college. And there's been better response, I would say, from colleges and universities in recent years. So there's a review process that our high school counselor works through. And then the colleges have a sign-off, something that'll be akin to, it's not always called the same thing, content or some different content that you may receive in the public schools, and they're making students and parents sign off on those. We also talked about community service, that's embedded in our high school offering and actually middle school too. So we're going to look at trying to sharpen some of our activities there with community service. In fact, I've had some outreach from some groups recently. Athletic Boosters, for example, we're talking about some ways that we can, enhance the student experience. So happy to answer any questions the board may have. And again, this comes up later in the agenda for approval.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you to the group of people who participated in this whole program of studies, because it's phenomenal. It really is. So hats off to the job that you've done, and for all those who had input too. I think we're on the right track.
I'm excited from the math side, having more opportunities, especially for our gifted children, because, we maxed out before, and now being able to raise that ceiling is exciting. We'll just keep passing these around the table, by the way. Luckily for us, Ruth Ann brings a bottle. So, yes, luckily she brings a bag of them. But I'm excited on the math side. I did want to clarify just on the College Credit Plus, so everyone knows those are college courses. Therefore, we don't have any input into the curriculum or the book. So we want to make sure parents know, because when you're taking a class here at the school, we've vetted that. We know what's in it. We're aware of it. But once your child signs up for College Credit Plus, that's controlled by the university. We have no input in that process, and we just want to make sure parents understand that, because there are sometimes topics and subject matter in there that parents should at least be aware of. So we want to, I will say, I went to Miss Merrill's presentation on College Credit Plus. She made it very clear during her presentation when I attended what it was, expectations, having to pass. If you don't, reimbursement. She did an excellent job at that. So I felt walking out of there, I knew what I was or wasn't getting into for my child. But I do want to make sure parents, if you're getting into those, that you do understand could be a financial obligation if criteria are not met and grades are not achieved. So, and then there's also a subject matter issue that you want to make sure your child's prepared for on those, and we are not overseeing that and have no ability to oversee that, even if we want to. So I just want to clarify that's what the College Credit Plus with Dr. Wagner was speaking of.
We talked about being age appropriate, so that seems to be age appropriate for your child, especially the psychology courses, sociology courses, etc. If that's where you think your child is, fine, but you should look over the coursework before you sign up.
I'd just like to thank the team, the curriculum team, and the administrators that have worked on bringing these opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities that are coming to the students that they haven't had previously. So parents, look at the program formats. When you go to sign your kids up for classes this year, you'll see new things, new opportunities. It's very encouraging. I'm really excited about it. It's the best yet. But I think we've always done a good job. I think even now, this is very exciting.
Yeah, excellent. And I did want to clarify on College Credit Plus, it's a fantastic opportunity and you can save yourself a lot of money. I just want to make sure parents understand what they're getting into when they enter that program. But it's a fabulous way to save yourself a year of college if you're capable of it, and save yourself, thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars of tuition. So it's a very positive program. Just be aware of the classes you're choosing, what the content is.
So later in the agenda, you'll have both to approve. If you approve those tonight, we're going to clean up all the pagination and some other things. We just want to make sure we get the content.
I love when you say
I know, I'm such a
Sorry?
I said I love when you say pagination.
Okay.
It sounds so
Can you spell it?
sounds very
Yeah,
doctorish.
Just like throw that in.
Sorry. I do want to underscore the team approach to this too. Debbie Seibel is our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Technology, and she's certainly leading this for us. But we also, when we hire principals or our existing principals, we want to make sure that we have instructional leadership, and from K all the way through 12, we really have input from all. So you're seeing this come together, but there's more. And then I do thank all of the board input too. We have our 2 curriculum committee board members with Ann and Amanda, but all the board members come in and ask questions. These are kind of seminal aspects of what we're doing, and they manifest a lot. So thank you very much. And we'll not only get this taken care of, the board approves this tonight, but then we're looking to the future, as I said. So more to come.
Excellent.
That's all
Thank
I
you.
have.
Moving on to the board committees, do we have any updates from finance?
Yeah, we met on February 8th. It was myself, Dr. Reichman, and Mr. Miller. So we talked about several items. The first item we talked about was budgeting versus actual costs for some of our programs. So we looked first at the athletic program because we're over budget, and we've been over budget for the last 3 years. So we have some digging to do to try to understand how. Right? So right now we just know that it's our revenue seems to be on target. So we don't know if our revenue numbers or our projections for revenue are too low because the cost of everything has really gone up. Right? So we kind of in the past set these budgets based on really just input from the treasurer. So we're going to go back to, say, in the athletic program, we're going to go back and look at each one of the sports and try to understand what the costs are associated with those specific sports. We're going to look at, what's our budget? Is our budget correct? Is it too low? It could be just the fact that we haven't updated our budget to reflect the cost of operating today. For example, cost of referees have gone way up. I think they've gone up over 50%
That's
in
right.
recent years. So when you start looking at everything, we want to really understand, because as we grow it and we change as a community, these costs can get out of hand, right? These cost overruns can become out of hand. So we want to really understand. So we appreciate Felicia's work on trying to dig deeper. And we're going to do that on a variety of different areas. We have different departments, and we're going to look at long-term capital outlays, right? We've done that on the buildings and properties, right? So every year we set aside money to replace roofs, to replace parking lots, right? So we want to try to take a look at doing that with some of our other programs. For athletics, for example, every so many years they have to do a replacement of equipment. Well, that may be a large spend for that year, but that may only happen every several years. So we want to put those in our budgets and in our forecasts so that we get a little bit better handle on where our money is going and when will we need the money. So that was one of the things we looked at. Another thing we looked at was our grants. We get grants from a variety of sources, and we wanted to make sure that we were tracking our grants and placing them in the right categories. So we looked at that. We also talked about the property evaluation presentation that was presented today by Felicia, so that we tried to have the community understand. And what's really going on. And we were really surprised as a committee that the valuations that the county had were so different, that you can live in one area and get a 4% increase in the value of your property. And you can live in the new addition, and I think it was 58%. So who would have believed that that's what was happening? So we have a better understanding of why people are seeing what they're seeing, and we tried to address that tonight. Felicia tried to address that tonight. And then the final thing that we looked at was we have a variety of investments, because we have some money that we've saved over the years, and they're invested in interest-bearing accounts. So we're going to do some more work and some more study on that, but we're trying to look at how do we maximize the income off our investments as far as terms, right? So right now, short-term rates are very high, but long-term rates are low because inflation's been happening too, so we all are aware of it. So if inflation's really high, then interest rates are really high. Tim alluded to the fact that his mortgage would be 8.8.
I think the home equity line of credit I saw was 8.11% if I wanted to borrow against it. And I said, no thanks.
You know that short-term rates, we get a really good premium for, we get a monthly payment on short-term rates, but we also have some long-term rates, some things that so when do you move from short-term to long-term? When do you do it? When's the optimum time? So we're going to talk about that and share that information with the board. It's a board decision, it's not our decision. But we need to try to gather some information so we can share it with the board, so the board can help guide us as the committee and know, and we can have some guidance so we know how to move forward on trying to, generate as much revenue as we can for the school district and make sure that we're fiscally responsible for the revenue that we've been given. So I think that's what we talked about. I don't know, Ruth Ann, if you have anything else, if I missed anything.
No, you absolutely encapsulated it beautifully.
Okay, so, we're a great team, and I want to also publicly apologize to Amanda. So we ran over Ruth Ann, right?
Yes.
And we had to
That's because you were there.
Okay, yeah, because I was there, okay? Blame me, it was my fault. But we had a policy meeting following that meeting. And I think we ran over, an hour or two?
No, it wasn't that bad. It was only about a half an hour.
Half an hour.
We're scheduling a follow-up meeting for
Okay.
finance. We're going to do that next week. We're going to do one next week.
But again, I want to apologize to them because we ran over, and we want to thank Amanda and Derek for flexibility for changing the time to accommodate us. When you look at finance, it's all these details. We have spreadsheets. We have a tremendous amount of information to look at, and it's because Mrs. Drumdy is providing us with all this information, and it takes us a little bit of time to digest all the information. So we appreciate all the work that she's done to help us understand better. In the past, everything was kind of done in a silo environment, if that makes any sense. And we're much more open to being presented more information so we can, as a board, make better decisions.
Yeah, the committee structure has gotten us deeper involved in some of these topics, and that was the goal of the committee structure, to get more involved in the policy side of finance, curriculum, not into the day-to-day operations of the school, but into the policy setting. And I think it's been successful. So again, my hats off to Dr. Wagner for setting those committees up, and Felicia for providing us with the information we need to make informed decisions. So I appreciate that. With that, we'll segue into the policy meeting.
We did not look at any new policies. We just took.
Didn't have time, it sounds like.
No, we did it. I'm on the policy committee too, so I apologize.
A little bit of our time was taken. But really, I don't think it was ever our intention to dive into anything new. We really just took an opportunity to look at, hey, what was passed, what was looked at the last couple of board meetings, what's sort of on our docket for approval, and then us just kind of shoring up our process of our timelines and how we're doing it, and ensuring that each and every board member has an opportunity to go through the policies. I mean, Alan and I sit in there for a couple hours sometimes, and Derek's really wonderful at making sense of all of it, but you three aren't in that room. And so it takes we can send dozens and dozens of pages your way. And so just ensuring that as we're moving forward, we're taking the appropriate time for each board member
to look it over, get back to each other, because it's a long process. And
Well,
so
and it's the most important thing we do as a board
It
is set policy. I mean, that's the single most important thing this board does is set policy, because that dictates everything else in the district. So policy is extremely important to us. It's not a fun topic. It's not exciting, but it is the most important thing we do. So spending the time, I appreciate the effort you guys put into the committee, but then once all that comes out, it does take a while to digest and then ask a lot of questions. So we've essentially just kind of, I won't say slowed down that process, but added some additional time into it so that way we can review everything. So that was the intent prior to voting on new policies, to make sure all 5 board members had enough time to digest everything.
for sure. And we're working to make sure we're finding that balance of keeping the momentum going, but not rushing too much that people feel like they don't have the adequate time to go through that. So that's really what we discussed.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And you have to understand a lot of our policies are out of date, so we're trying to update our policies. And the reason why policies are important is because with the policies in place, then the administration and the staff writes the administrative guidelines. And that's really kind of the Bible that they use in order to operate the school. So we set kind of an overall direction or overall view of how we want things to work. And they really put all the details of how it should work.
All right. Thank you very much. Moving on.
Yep.
Board meeting minutes.
We're going to go
Consent?
through LPDC, I think, right?
We had a meeting on February 1st with friends.
Oh, it wasn't listed. I skipped it because
We did have a meeting. I want to get counted.
You know what?
for it.
That was missed. No, you're absolutely right.
I just realized I
Yeah.
didn't catch it.
I was only going to the ones that said
I
TBD,
didn't
so I
catch it.
skipped
No.
it.
I didn't catch
Building
it.
grounds and safety.
We did have a meeting, and I did have to unfortunately leave during part of the meeting, and Ruth Ann covered it the rest of the way. We had great conversation about out at the baseball and softball field, which you're going to see in your agendas tonight, or you've had a chance to review it, where we are asking to purchase a waste container, and one for the softball field, one for the baseball field. You can use that for storage, is my understanding. That's what their largest intent is. And so that's on your agendas tonight. And we talked about the baseball. We put some terracing in down there for the steps, the weather, things like that. But I don't even know if it got done in the last 2 weeks. 'Cause we had some
It
good
was
weather
near
last week.
completion. Yeah, it was near completion
Yeah.
on Thursday, and it should be done this week. With I
So
don't know,
that's
the
exciting.
handrail won't be done yet,
The
but
handrail was
the
late coming in.
yeah, but the steps should be almost done.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And we'll go take a look at that. And should be a nice addition out there to safely get down to the baseball field. And then Ruth Ann, we're going out for bid on many of our contracts, landscaping, snow removal, trash removal, just all of them. So, yeah. Did you want to talk about the second part that I was?
I think you do.
Okay.
I think we just
What you
elaborated
just
in
did.
those areas,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we kind of covered it. It was long range planning, and like you
Mm-hmm.
said, looking at
Absolutely.
some of the facilities. Okay.
We move on to the consent agenda then.
Before we get there, so I'll do LPDC, and then we also have insurance. I think Mrs. Brewer, Mrs. Thomas, you'll be available for insurance next week, I believe. That's right.
220 on is what.
Yeah, a week from tomorrow, I think.
I have it written on my calendar, but I didn't put it was insurance.
Okay.
I was
Well,
wondering where
here's
I was
the
gonna be.
reminders.
I
There
knew
it is.
someone would tell me
Yep.
where I was
It's next
supposed to be.
Tuesday.
Yep.
If the 20th is correct.
Yep.
Next Tuesday.
And we'll get some updates there. Mrs. Drummy and I have been
Where-
working with our insurance consultants.
Are we meeting here?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yep. And then we'll be able to look at some of our data still. We have an immature year, but we'll have some data to review. Okay. I'll just give an update on the LPDC, which met on January 23rd. They had one individual. Well, let me tell you who was there first. Stephanie Stuckey, Renee Britton, Annette Price, Lori Kurtz, Ben Jagger, Angel King, and Derek Busenberg. We had one individual professional development plan that was approved. I won't list names. We had 4 license renewals that were processed at that meeting. We did not have any staff who needed to have contact hours reviewed, nor do we have any staff leaving. You have to work on reciprocity. There was no new business. Some things that are in the wings, though, or are being looked at is with the State Department of Education, or Department of Education Workforce, I should say. We're still showing some of the old buildings pointed, at least in our state data. So we're still showing Oregon, and we need to enter GIS, so we will do that. And other than that, there is a kiosk system that we use for the local professional development committee, and that there's a sunset provision with LACO, who's our provider. So we're going to be looking for another LPDC, local professional development committee software, and we'll do that. That's the update from LPDC, and we are publishing all of our meetings now. I have to report on that because it's considered a board's committee, believe it or not, even though there's no board members there. So that's why we do that, and we're following all the same notice procedures. So thank you, and that's all I have. Now we're ready for consent.
All right. So, okay. If I can get a motion for consent,
I'll motion. Second.
and you can go ahead through it, Dr. Wagner.
Sure, I should have read it's 24-02-023, and I'll run through these real quick. We have board meeting minutes. We have unpaid leave for staff. We're detailed there, or at least the names are. With our past employee, Jen Villa, we have a reconciliation. So we have part of a day we have to pay her out. So we have to get authority for that from the board. So that's what you see listed there. Track and field on E, this is the one I made a verbal change to. So there should no longer be, it will just be the middle school. There's no high school assignment with that. So that was a verbal change I made. Under volunteers, we have quite a list of volunteers. One of the things I do want to do is thank Mrs. Lowe, because she's fulfilled what the board has asked. So now we have assignments now. And that, sometimes I think she makes things look easy, but there's a lot of detail that went into trying to make sure that we have all that detailed. In some cases, you'll see that we put people as general because they just want to serve as a volunteer. Some are very specific, 5th grade camp, for example, different building assignments. So you have all that in front of you now, and if there's ever questions, let us know. But she's doing a great job with that. And then we also have some coaching positions there too. And that'll be for the remainder of this school year. So we have Jerry Cannon, Joe Horvath, and A.G. Napier.
All right. Any questions, comments?
I do have a question. I think you have to take a vote. We never.
We did motion.
Okay.
I did it before you read it.
Should-
No, but I thought we had to vote the consent to go in, and then we could do comments.
What are we doing?
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. No.
We did a motion for this action here. The consent.
Didn't you do a first and second, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. I think we're good.
Okay.
Just want to speak to the great number of days, 37 days, what happened there in elementary.
It's a personnel issue that I can talk to you about on the side if you want. Typically, I would say that, well, there's something we shouldn't disclose publicly, but I would tell you that it's something that we've looked at the procedures. We've made sure that it meets the standard that it needs to when someone's away.
Okay.
That's a fair question. It's just one I can't answer
Yeah.
from a personnel standpoint.
And on the volunteers, do we have have we gone so far as to have I'll say a job description for lack of a better words? Do we know what these people are going to do in the school? I think it's awesome. I really do, but I also want to know, do we know what they're going to do?
Yeah, well, more can be done, yes. And I think we're talking about job responsibilities, but I do want to compliment, especially at our elementary and intermediate, the principals are doing a nice job, working with volunteers and making sure they're engaged and talking about what their level, support can be and what it can't be as well too. So we do appreciate that, and we'll look at more responsibilities and I can say job description per se, but something that they understand where the boundaries are.
And that's where I was heading with it for the boundaries, because that's kind of my baby there.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have a question on the volunteer coaching. For volunteer coaching, raise my eyebrow that we're approving the basketball volunteer coach after the season's ended and we just honored him.
Yeah. Good catch.
And
So,
I know Jerry, and don't
yep.
have a problem.
No, it's not, nothing against him. A good catch though. That caught our attention as well too, and we need to make sure we have more controls so that we have people approved before they're actually working with
An
in a
entire
volunteer.
season.
Yes. Yes. So I actually did follow up.
Good thing you went undefeated.
Did follow up with the administrative team, including Mr. Brickner, and he's going to make sure that he has more engagement with the coaches and procedures and all too, because this is something we're always careful about, that we want to make sure.
Dr. Wagner and I spoke about this specifically, and we're working on the athletic director in the coaches' meetings being more meaningful and substantive to cover several issues, this being one.
Well, this isn't the first time we've had this come up, unfortunately, where we've had to approve them. At least while I've been on the board for 4 years.
Some of it.
This is not good.
Yeah, I know it's not good, and you're absolutely right. Again, we have to put more controls in the environment. I would tell you that in the last, at least I can speak last year and a half plus, it's been fairly good. But this one was one I know could raise eyebrows because we're at the end of the season. We're asking for approval. So.
Don't we have a spreadsheet as they pass? Yes, I thought we did. So it's just we missed something.
Yes, and again, that's where I think, I use the phrase about single point failures. We have to make sure that we have checks and balances in the system. Like I said, more control. So I have, I'm going to be polite here because we're in public session, but I have had some stern conversations that this can't happen again, and been assured as such. And then Mr. Schwager also asked me about it, so you heard that response already too. But it's very important that we make sure we have everyone going through the process before they work with our students. Yep.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. Moving on to the treasurer's recommendations.
He's keeping up with the agenda, so it takes a second. Though I can watch the screens go. It takes a minute to catch up.
So first item is discussion presentation about federal grants for you.
This is one of those items you can see that it's a discussion and presentation. There's no board action needed on this one. We were talking about it was similar to when we did a retire reemployment last June or something.
I think it's great we're having the discussion. We've had other years we didn't have a discussion, and I think it's exciting to know that we're pursuing grants and we're going to track them and we're going to do great things.
We'll be sure to share that
That's right.
with everyone as we do that. One of our main tools to get grants is through the Ohio Department of Education and through the Comprehensive Continuous Improvement Plan. That is basically a grant application system and a planning system that's used by the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. So all schools use that. In that plan, we outline our goals and our strategies and different action steps to achieve those goals for each of the grants. Most of the grants that are in this application system are federal entitlement grants, and those we get automatically based on our population for students that are disadvantaged youth, so on poverty-based. Occasionally, there are competitive grants from the state. Those we would have to apply for. That's the nature of competitive. You apply, you may get it, you may not get it. We are currently participating in 7 federal grants, the entitlement grants, and 3 state safety grants. We also receive miscellaneous grants from time to time that are outside this continuous improvement plan, or CCIP as we call it. And those would be the recent grants that we received from Meta, formerly Facebook, and Intel. This is just a high-level summary so you can see all of the grants that we've received this year. $588,000 in grants, and I've listed them not in order of importance. That's just how they're listed in the CCIP, and I tend to think of them in that way. Title I is our, a lot of people might refer to it, you might hear in the school, oh, that's our reading and math grant. It's improvement of academic achievement. We receive $160,000 this year. Title II-A is our teacher quality or class size reduction grant. Title III, English as a second language or English learners. We have a small grant that we actually redirect to our county ESC, and they service the needs. We also have Title IV-A, student support and academic enrichment. Title IDEA-B is for special education and related services. That is our largest federal grant, $365,000. And then ESEA, or Early Childhood Special Education Grant, we received $9,600. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about each of the individual grants. The Title I, academic achievement, we actually pay not quite all the salary, 78% of the salary for 3 teachers. And those teachers are providing additional supports in, you might need some help here, Debbie. Is that in reading and math?
Yes.
Reading.
Yes. Yes, reading that.
And the general fund then pays for all of the benefit obligations related to those staff members. Okay. And Title II, improvement of teacher quality and our class size reduction. We are able to cover 73% of one teacher that serves in this role. Again, the general fund pays for all of the benefits associated with that staff member. And we are using this grant as providing class size reduction at the middle school. So we have a middle school intervention services. Title III, the language instruction, that's where I mentioned that is directed to the ESC. And so the consortium then is providing those English language services for us. That is quite common when a grant is very small, is to basically pool that with others in order to really get more services than you are paying for. Title IV-A, student support and academic enrichment. We've used this for the ROCKS program, and that's been provided to students this year. We can support PBIS, which is the positive behavior interventions, suicide prevention. So this lets us do some additional supports outside typical instruction. The IDEA-B, the special ed and related services. We are employing 5 intervention specialists with this grant. It is paying for 72% of their salary and benefits, and we are able to employ also a director over special ed with these funds. The last grant, the Early Childhood Grant. This is support in particular for preschool, and this funding is also directed to the Licking County Educational Service Center, and this would go toward the cost of our preschool services. Currently, we are paying $89,000 for the preschool services at the ESC, and so that helps defer some of that expense. Just in general, with our federal grants, they really help support the high quality instruction and intervention that we're already providing. It's important to note, though, that many of these services are mandated requirements. So although we provide a high level of service, there are additional things that we have to do, and these grants do not, they're really insufficient to meet all of those additional obligations. you've probably heard the term before of unfunded mandates. You know, we have, of course, high aspirational goals, but there's always that expectation gap of when you have disadvantaged youth or special ed, it requires more to service. And the federal government recognizes that and then gives us these entitlements to help meet those higher needs. Each July 1st, we update our CCIP program, what we intend to do with it, how we reallocate the budget, and assess what are our needs for that subsequent year. We're on the path that we're on for this year. That really wouldn't change. But as we go into future years, we generally will start that planning April and May to be set for July 1. Any questions or feedback about these? Okay.
That's excellent. Thank you very
That's great.
much.
Thank you.
I think I would like a copy of what you just did and also the previous on the taxes.
Sure
She's
thing.
writing feverishly.
Aw,
So
and
I'm sure she
I just,
wants to
yeah.
take-
All right. I'll be sure to email those to you. A few individual recommendations for you this evening. The first resolution would be to approve a resolution with Meta Solutions, which is not to be confused with Meta Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Meta Solutions is a consortium in Columbus that supports schools. And we would like to participate in them issuing a request for proposal for the purchase of competitive retail natural gas from the lowest and best bidder. We currently are participating in the consortium natural gas program, but we do need this resolution in order to express our intention to continue participation, and it starts with the request for the proposals. It's not a commitment to move forward, but this is just saying we do want to participate, and we'd like to review those bidders as well.
Look at both of these. Any questions?
I'll motion. Second.
Got a motion. Second.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton.
Yes.
Resolution 24-02-06 would be to approve a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Licking County Budget Commission and further authorize certification to the Licking County Auditor. And this, interestingly, this applies, it's related to the presentation we heard earlier on values, but these are values as of January 1 that will be billed then next year.
All right. If I can get a motion.
I'll motion.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes.
Thank you. And the last resolution, number 24-02-027, to authorize the treasurer to request advanced settlement payments of tax collections received during the first half of the calendar year. And this is necessary, even though you passed a resolution as part of the standing authorizations in January. When I submitted that to the county auditor, he said they no longer take an annual request. They will need it 2 times a year. So I apologize for that redundancy.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Any other questions? Call the roll.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Moving on to Dr. Wagner.
Resolution 24-02-028 is a facility use reduction request.
Can I get a motion?
Second.
Second. Questions, comments? I think we've received the information on this one. Call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes.
Resolution 24-02-029 is Middle School Program of Studies.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We saw the presentation. Any questions in addition?
It's exciting.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Resolution 24-02-030 is High School Program of Studies.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
We saw the presentation. Any additional questions? All right.
It's great.
Call the roll.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm going to need that again. That's marked consent on here. So may I have the for who first?
I made
I'm
them.
Yep. And
I was second.
yep. It does say consent on this.
You know, it's funny, we'll look at this agenda 10 times,
Yeah.
we'll have 15 different people look at it, and we're sitting there going, okay, how did no one see it? No one saw this. How many times?
Yeah.
You know, and then tomorrow Debbie's gonna be like, how did I miss this? And we're gonna be like, hey, we had 15 eyes on this. Well, actually, I used to have 16 eyes, we have 15, right? 15.
Mrs. Davis,
Depends where you work.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mr. Benton.
Yes.
Resolution 24-02-031 is our annual membership for the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Discussion. Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer.
Yes.
Resolution 24-02-032 is open enrollment for the 24-25 school year.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Discussion.
I want to highlight that what this starts our process, and so for the next school year, for the upcoming school year, we will no longer have ninth grade students as open enrolled. So this only allows, and this is what we planned about a year plus ago now. It'll be grades 10 through 12, and then we'll get to the next resolution.
Yep. Understood. Any other questions? Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mr. Benton.
Yes.
Resolution 24-02-033 is open enrollment for the 25-26 school year.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
And a
Second.
Just want to call the board's attention, and this was part of our strategic planning when we did this over a year ago. So this, in the 25-26 school year, this would eliminate 10th grade. That would only allow 11th and 12th grade open enrollment. Obviously, we're doing this because we're watching our enrollment trends. We're looking at fill rates in the building, staffing levels.
Yeah, and for this, we're trying to give everyone out there ample notice. If you're not living in the district, this gives you essentially a year and a half to move into the district if you're going to want to have your child enrolled K through 12. This will just, or K through 10. This will leave 11 and 12. In the next 2 years, our intention is to close open enrollment for 11th and then 12th grade. So we've been moving it up a year consistent with our policy for the last 10 years. So these are just really the public notification of what our intent is.
As the board had asked last year, we'll continue on the paperwork to highlight. We did it for this current year, and then we'll do the same thing that we noticed that 10th grade is coming right for 25. So we're trying to get that written part of it. It's on our website as well.
Excellent. Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton, Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer.
Yes.
Resolution 24-02-034 are baseball and softball storage units. If we get a first and second, then I'll provide some detail about this.
I'll first.
Get a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Some detail on this. Typically, we try to get as many vendors as possible. We have 2 here. The reason why you're going to see a variance, we're asking for up to $14,000 for both. I learned a lot about this process. It's somewhat akin, as it explained to me, like a used car. You can have a car that's, X years old and it has so many miles on it, or you can have another that has more or less. And part of what they look at are conditions with these dents, condition of paint, doors, and all too. So we put on here not to exceed for both. And you see that the two companies will probably come in under that amount. And then what I'll do is, if you authorize up to the 14,000, I'll come back to the next board meeting and I'll give an update and see how we settle this. But these costs, as you see them right now, are these options. I would say, as it stands, it could be more or less. So that's why we have a little more variance in the cost available.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Resolution 24-02-035 is our STEAM cabinetry for Johnstown Intermediate School. And if I get a first and second, then I'll provide some detail on this as well.
Got a motion? Can I get a second?
Second.
What you see here is we have 4 different quotes. Typically, as a public entity, we're going to try to take the lowest quote if possible, but there's some different factors that you'll look at, with this, and you'll see that we're asking for up to $24,000. The reason for this is when you look at the bidding process, you have, in this case, you want to look at, does it match? Does it have the same quality? What about the service that's provided? Maintenance and references sometimes of how equipment holds up. We're most likely going to be on the higher end on this. We won't take the lowest, but sometimes, you get what you pay for in some respects. We want to make sure that what we will have stands the test of time and fits in with the rest of the cabinetry that's in the building. And so same thing, we're asking for a little more than what these estimates show because there's some variance in this about how some cabinets could wrap around corners and all. This is not an exact apples to apples comparison. This is the closest we can get. In some cases, it's not the same. And what I don't want to do is we would have an intermediate, we would have a motif that doesn't fit, or something that doesn't stand the quality, and you could pay a lot less money, as you know, and then we'll be back here in a short period of time replenishing or having to replace it. So if the board approves it up to $24,000, I'll come back and reconcile that amount, or I'll be able to reconcile and bring an update to the board at the next meeting as well.
Any questions, comments?
I saw you knocking IKEA over there.
Oh,
My IKEA furniture has held up very well.
Oh, I'm putting together 2 cabinets right now from there. I just said
it's a nightmare.
you have to be able to read and follow the instructions.
There's
is
no
the
It's on
challenge.
pictures.
The
Yes.
IKEA is actually interesting. It's we have 10,000. It's most likely that's a little low. In some aspects it looks comparable, but it doesn't. It's not going to wrap around the room. It's not going to keep with the rest of the material. The quality doesn't look too bad. It's just that you can't get into the customization as much. Where honestly, like that company like Farnham, which is the more expensive one, they're doing this in schools, and this is part of their core business.
Any other questions, comments?
May I confirm, was it Thomas first, Davis second? Thomas first? Thank you. Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Resolution 24-02-036 is our electrical services for our STEAM project again, and that's at the intermediate school.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can we get a second?
I'll do it. Amanda's looking at me.
I was in the middle of a yawn. It was not moving fast enough.
Staying on theme, and this is our last resolution like this, there's a little variance here. We have 3 quotes. Most likely we're going to end up in that $4,500 or less amount, but if we can't get there, I'll come back to the board and ask for more. What this is going to allow is for all electrical service around those cabinets. That's part of the consideration we have too, because with our STEAM equipment, we're going to have 3D printers in our intermediate school, vinyl cutter, maybe a laser engraver as well too, so we'll need more electrical service.
We're going to put more electrical outlets along the cabinetry so they
Yeah,
can plug in, or
it's a good question. What we looked at, and there's a lot of discussion on whether we go inside the cabinetry, what we're going to do. I think we're going to go right above it, and there'll be a strip in places. And won't be judicious with that. There'll most likely be a power strip or a pole that comes down and be as unobtrusive as possible, and then we'll have a strip so that way you can plug into the off the the counter, if you will, or at the top, so that we're not coming from underneath and have to drill holes to try to make sure things fit. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton.
Yes.
I should have told you too on those last two resolutions, we'll be looking at our donation of STEAM monies actually for that. So there shouldn't be a general fund expenditure. Mrs. Drummy and I have been working on that. Okay, so we'll use part of our grant for that. Next resolution is resolution 24-02-037, Licking Area Computer Association EMIS Support Services.
Can I get a motion?
I'll second.
Little information here. Earlier in the agenda, you approved our former staff member, Jen Villa, in a partial day that we have. What this is in her absence, we're contracting with LACA for EMIS support, and Mrs. Drummy and the team and I have been working. This is a stopgap measure until we get a regular staff member, but with our team, we're able to keep the reporting processes available, up to speed as we need to through EMIS for right now.
Any questions, comments? Call the roll.
Sorry, my system locked up on me.
Okay. Broken again.
There we go. So sometimes, sorry.
I can see that screen, how slow it moves.
Yeah.
I think because of the web application.
So it was Okay, Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
It's,
Yeah.
that's weird.
Hamster's getting old, isn't it?
Not you. Computer.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
it keeps flashing back and forth and undoing what I'm doing. I'm so sorry.
Clearly, they're
And
not
I'm
paying
not-
for 500 units.
That actually hasn't happened before. Okay. We have Mrs. Thomas, Mrs. Boer, Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Benton? Mr. Swager?
Yes.
When the system works, it's good because it helps with the notes part of it too when we produce, right?
It does, it facilitates the minutes.
I'll try to slow down. How's it?
Yeah.
Resolution 24 -02 -037A. This is the resolution that we added at the beginning of the agenda, so it's 037A. This is for the honor flight student ambassadors. And if I get a first second, I'll provide more detail.
I'll give you first.
Got a motion from Ms. Thomas? Can I get a second?
I'll do a second. That would be fun.
So what this is, Mrs. King, I was talking about this earlier today, but just to give a little more context, so this will allow up to 6 high school students to serve as ambassadors for the honor flight missions out of Columbus Airport, and that would occur in May. And a little background, these missions are to honor our senior veterans with a trip to Washington, D.C., to visit the nation's memorials, to help them share their stories, and to celebrate and affirm their service and homecoming. And I believe Mr. Boer recently had that experience, didn't he? Yes.
One question on the 6 students, does that mean they will actually be chosen, or does that mean they're just gonna an opportunity?
What, how are they supporting their trip, especially with it being so soon to May? We're what, 2 months?
There's no cost.
There's no cost. The honor flight covers it. Very nice. It really is.
I think beyond its intended purpose of helping our veterans was very important. I also think it creates that sense of service and acknowledgement for our students to see the sacrifices that people go through and really have a living connection to history.
Sounds great. I appreciate it. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Benton.
Yes.
All right, moving on. Any board comments? I think we've talked a lot, so we're good. Any superintendent?
I just have a few things real quick. Want to remind everyone that the Hidden in Plain Sight, we had one session of that already, and that was on February 6th, and some of us were there. It was, I think there was a steady stream of attendees, and there's a follow-up session on February 15th from 4 to 6 p.m., and that'll be at the middle school. And this is an awareness program for parents and adults. If you haven't seen it, it's quite interesting because the general, well, there's a lot of topics they cover, but one of which is sometimes what you see in the environment can be a little unassuming to you, but you realize there's more there. You know, we look at it with our adult eyes sometimes and not teenage eyes. So it's a very worthwhile. So I encourage anyone who has more interest in that to certainly follow up. At the basketball game last week, we on Thursday also had the food pantry plaque ceremony, and I want to thank Mr. Bruce Huffman for leading that initiative, and of course all the support. We beat Northridge again, but you know, one of the things that we talk about with that, and they gave me the plaque, of course, on behalf of the district, but really everyone wins on that. You know, it's great that we get to replenish the food pantry, and
You know, I'm competitive in everything we do with them, so.
well, I have to tell you, our kids are, you know, Mr. Zarelli does a nice job with the pep band and keeping the kids organized, and we won all of our athletic competitions that night, and when there was such a good momentum around this, that the students actually had the plaque and they were crowd surfing and holding it up, and I said to Mrs. King, I'm like, Mrs. King, can we get that plaque back, please? But they were that excited about that too, so it was good stuff. So that was all good stuff, right? Wanted to highlight that community bus service, you know, is our partner and provides transportation service through a contract to the district. There is, this is Love the Bus Month, and what that is National Association for Pupil Transportation, and they sponsor the Love the Bus Month, and there's some activities, one of which will be going down at the end of the month and meeting with some of the staff. We usually try to do lunch with them and an opportunity to spend some time, so that'll be coming up. At the general message there is please recognize our bus drivers and everything that they're doing. We had a State of Schools presentation last week with City Council. I think that went well. Do appreciate the council's questions and opportunity to provide that update. Very enthusiastic, and the partnership was mentioned many times about the schools and the city, and I think that's expected, but certainly welcome because we're all pulling the same end of the rope. We have a lot coming, and I think we have to be in service to one another. I want to provide a quick update. I have on here LACA, the Information Technology Center, which we call ITC. It's an area of study for us. It's one of the things that I have on my list. I think the board has seen a little bit of some of the work we're doing, but we have to decide if we're going to continue with LACA for the future, and it's going to be something that's going to come to the forefront. I know it's been in our work this year and our objectives, but it's going to accelerate here as we get close. If we were to end our contract with LACA, we would look at other opportunities, one of which is Meta Solutions, and we have a strong partnership with them already. They're the consortium that Mrs. Drummond mentioned. So more to come on that, but it could be a little controversial, but I want to make sure that I'm going to put that up on the board's radar again because it has been our objectives, but it's going to be coming here soon, especially as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. A couple other updates real quick. Originally, our board meeting was scheduled for February 26th, but we pushed that back. Our Education and Workforce Forum, as a reminder, is that evening. We'll have the ribbon cutting at 5 o'clock, and that'll be for the high school STEAM lab, and that's the Meta, former Facebook, sponsored, so that's going to be an exciting event. And we did receive confirmation that the Lieutenant Governor will be in attendance for that at 5 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock, we will have the Education and Workforce Forum, and that'll be a consortium of various schools. Yeah, so the 5 o'clock session is actually in the high school, and we'll have everything ready there. And then we were working on this again today. We should be done at the latest about 5:40 or so, and then we'll be to the PAC at 6 o'clock. And we have a form scheduled there. Generally, and again, we're working on all the finer details, we'll have a presentation at the Performing Arts Center. The Lieutenant Governor is expected to speak at that, although he can't stay for the entire event. And then we'll have a forum there. And then when we're done there, we'll have some student ambassadors, and we're going to take people down to the middle school gymnasium. and we'll have the opportunity to have some businesses set up, and they'll have either displays or just there to interact with others. So we'll be talking the ways we can interface our K-12 educational program and job opportunities. And if you know of anyone, we're encouraging even recent graduates who may be looking for careers. There's an opportunity. I've had a few questions about that. So more to come on that. We were going to reschedule our board meeting for the following day, but we postponed that because Mr. Benton made sure to let us know that Liberty Township has a strategic planning meeting. And Mr. Swagger, you talked about earlier about our importance with working with our township. So some of us are going to try and attend that meeting on the 27th to make sure we are playing in the same, working in the same direction, both economic development and how land is going to be used. So then the next date, as a reminder, is that we have our rescheduled board meeting. So that'll be the work session. That'll be Wednesday then instead of Monday. Grandparents' Day is coming up, and we have that at the elementary school and the intermediate. And what I will do for Grandparents' Day is I'll send you invites, I think like we did last year. I know that at the elementary school we have over 800 people coming for Grandparents' Day. I know everyone's a little disappointed because our goal was 900, but we're going to go with the 800. It's okay. You know, we'll try to do better next year. So yeah, still not 900. It's okay.
It's wonderful.
No, but I'll send an invite to the board. So if you can show up for any of that, that's certainly welcome. I know dates this Thursday, and then what about the intermediate? Okay, I'll send you invites on the calendar if you can make it. I know that's short notice, but again, strong response there in all seriousness. We're very, very happy about that. Went to the wrestling tournament on Saturday. Wow, we had about 10 different schools there. Tremendous to see our gym, such a buzz, and our individual wrestlers did well. I have to say, personally, it's kind of fun to see girls wrestling, you know, and some of them beat the boys. It was kind of fun to watch some of that and how they handled that afterwards. So that was good. Cornell School, I think I may have been able to give some of you an actual copy of this. I had a meeting with them recently. They want to talk about the future. I think I sent you, I know I sent you a digital copy. I also have, if you need a copy, they prepared this for us too. So I was able to see a couple board members, so I'll make sure I have extra copies. Anybody else who needs them? I know I caught some of you, so that's there. And then more to come. We'll take that through a separate committee and we'll look at that. And then lastly, I just want to put a final comment in about rebranding. Had some questions about the rebranding process, and I've been working with some of the community on that. I think anytime there's a change, it's difficult, but we work through it. I did explain the two-step process that the board approved, you know, in the fall, an initial change or initial approval of some of the branding so we can get some of our athletic programs moving forward, and then the final in November. But there's questions and things about, you know, are we continuing this path? And we are. You know, so if you have any questions about it or you receive anything, let me know. But we have our brand locker, and we're trying to put some controls in place. Especially we have some outside stores that we've been trying to make sure they manage, and we're trying to shut those down to make sure they're back to our athletic departments or our athletic boosters and our PTO. And that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Any questions, comments? If I can get a motion to go into executive session for purposes of, if you don't mind.
So it's resolution 24-2-038, and we have it for two reasons: consideration of appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. And our second issue is consideration of the purchase of property for public purpose or sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, unfit use of property at competitive bidding, or premature disclosure of information would give an unfair, competitive, or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest.
I'll motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Call the roll.
It's a good thing that was a long resolution because my screen just popped up.
I can read slower.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Benton? Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Swagger?
Yes. Going into executive at 7:20. No action expected afterwards. Thank you.